Are you going through a dark night of the soul or awakening process? Today, I'm going to talk about the dark night of the soul and dig into what is the dark night of the soul, how long does it last, what is its purpose, and what you can do in order to move through the dark night of the soul process more quickly. Stay tuned as we dive in and explore the deeper aspects of the dark. I'm Drake Nyx, and this is Drake Nyx Vision. I'm an intuitive guide and soul coach, and I help people like you find their purpose and passion, bring it out into the world, and make the planet a better place while you're at it. In order to do that, you gotta go through a lot of bull. There's a whole lot that we have to remove from the way that we perceive the world around us and how we perceive ourselves. We have to dive deep into our beliefs and into the things that we often don't question so that we can remove our blinders, remove our limitations and blocks, and fully blast out into a more expansive version of us that exists within. In this 3-part series, I plan to break down the 3 different times I went through a dark night of the soul and awakening process. If you watched my last video, I talked about my first awakening, which was a really beautiful and transformative time for me, although it was mixed with darkness and confusion. In this video, I was going to go into my second dark night of the soul and awakening process, but as I looked through the different chapters of my life, I realized I couldn't just package it up as neatly as I wanted to because I've gone through so many waves of this awakening journey that it actually isn't just 3 separate chapters. It's ongoing and infinite, and I could break it down into a lot more at this point. And so instead, in this second part of the series, I'm going to dive in more to the dark night of the soul specifically and help you to understand the ins and outs as far as I see it. So hopefully it will help you on your journey and to be able to recognize the wayposts along the way that will help you to get through it. So what is a dark night of the soul? I want to start out by saying that when you go into the darkness, there is this idea that as far back as you go into the dark, you will eventually be launched further into the light. It's like if you have a bow and arrow and you pull it back, it has to be pulled back. It needs the tension in order to be released so that you can truly let that arrow fly. So I see that in the dark night of the soul, that is part of the process here, that we get pulled back into the dark and it actually fuels our ability to rise up into our brilliance and our brightness. In the meantime, though, that dark place that we might find ourselves in can be very confusing and lonely. It's a time period that you are likely to feel very sad, depressed. You might find yourself with some mania. Things might seem really bleak. You might be triggered one thing after another coming down that just seems like there's no end to the suffering in life. So it's a deep suffering that can take you into the depths of despair. It's a time period that you might have ongoing sickness, limitation. You might find a lack of creativity, a lack of energy to do anything. It might be very difficult for you to hang around other people because you can't be as engaged. You're much more energetically sensitive. It's difficult potentially for you to even see what is happening around you because you might be hyper projecting onto the situations that are occurring that then distort the reality and make it more difficult for you to participate with others. You might discover that you have a hyper awareness that the life that you're living isn't the life that you're supposed to be living. On a deep soul level, you recognize that something is wrong, and so it feels really painful because you're in a situation where it would be nearly impossible for you to change your life path. And it's not to say that you have to change your whole life through this process, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But the dark night of the soul is going to make you confront all the things about your life that may not be working. So where do they come from? Dark nights of the soul can be triggered by a variety of events. It might be that you experience the loss of a loved one. You might go through a breakup. You might lose a job. You might take on an illness. You might have an injury, or something is going to come up where it is going to make it difficult for you to continue on with your life in the ways that you have been. I do want to add into this that whatever the experience is, and it could be long-term, where again, you find yourself in a life that is just slowly eating away at you and finally bringing you to the depths of your despair, and you just dive headfirst into this place of darkness, that it is for your soul's growth. And oftentimes there is a soul contract connected with that. If we're going to get into the woo-woo a little bit, we could say that before you even entered into this lifetime, you had a plan at a certain point in your growth and evolution, you would hit a dark night of the soul so that you could awaken, so that you could come into the life that you're supposed to be living. And so whatever stage it's happening is exactly when it's supposed to be. And it may be that you experience them multiple times through your life. Oftentimes this is the case. I think it's very rare that you would see somebody go through one dark night of the soul and then come out of it enlightened, although it does happen. Most of us, because we are here to be warriors, will experience multiple dark nights of the soul through our lifetime because it is helping us to go further inward and discover more of our gifts and our medicine and our personal vision that we can then bring out into the world, which might sound scary, but after you go through it once or twice, you kind of know the terrain and you have more skills in order to help yourself. In those moments that you find yourself in the dark, I have found that you recognize that it is kind of a lonely process. If you watched my talk last week with Joey from Library of the Untold, we talked about this theme of having to find yourself in your aloneness. And I think about this line from the Goddess Alchemy Project song that says, "I reach within just to find my own hand." And I think that's so true to this process, that when you're going through it, you do have to go inwards and find your own hand, hold your own hand, hold yourself through that experience. If you watched previous videos, I have brought up frequently how being your own best friend is so crucial to your evolutionary process. The sooner that you can find that deep friendship within, the easier it will be to go through those dark forests and down into the deep waters of discovery, because you won't feel like you're alone because you have yourself and you recognize that even in the silence, even in the immense abyss that might exist, in those places, you have a fullness and you have a love that is created within. Which brings me to what is the purpose of a dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is there to help you to eradicate the blocks that are keeping you from a place of unconditional love. And in the moment, it might feel like, what the there is no love, there is only darkness, there is only pain, there is only confusion, there is only weird entities. Like, I don't know what exactly you're experiencing, but that's definitely something that can come up. You can be haunted. In those moments, it's really hard to find that there is a loving presence that exists there in the dark. But you recognize that you are the candle, you are the light. You are going into that darkness so that you can shine that unconditional love, and finding that you are so strong that you can bring light into the darkness. And again, it is inside of you. It is here within that you discover and that you create. It's like you find yourself in that dark place and all you have is like a couple of sticks to rub together, and you're like blistering your hands and it hurts and you're getting frustrated, and then eventually you create the spark, and then the spark turns into a roaring fire, and then eventually your hands heal, and even though the darkness is still around you, that fire grows bigger and bigger, and you feel the strength and you feel proud of what you've been able to accomplish. There's a lot of reasons why we go through the dark night of the soul, additionally, where as humans, we are very stubborn and we don't want to change our lives. I'm a Taurus. Like, I love being lazy. I love developing habits so that I don't have to think about what I'm supposed to do next. And yet sometimes my habits don't serve me. And so when I am forced to go into those dark spaces, whether it be for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or much longer, it forces me to take a look at myself and sometimes just to exist in the energy of what I personally have created from my own ignorance. We don't often think about that what what you're experiencing is often self-created in some way. You might be like, well, it was that person over there. They created this experience. Well, that person is in your life because you have brought them into your life in one way or another. And thus they are teaching you a lesson that you really need to learn right now. And it is up to us to come to the place, again, where we bring light into the darkness, where we bring unconditional love where it seems not to exist. How do we bring that up in us and then showcase that to another person, even those who have wronged us? How do we show them forgiveness? I talk about this all the time, but the reality around us is a mirror. We're just constantly being presented mirrors that are shining back aspects of ourselves. Even in our day-to-day interactions, we have moments where we see things that we love. Oh, I love that character trait in somebody. I love the way that that person did that over there. I really love that art. I really love the way that that is styled. We're constantly picking up from the world around us what we like. We're also picking up from the world around us what we don't like. We have an interaction. Oh, I don't like that person over there. I don't like how they do this. I don't like how they treat people. Similarly, when we interact with that person, we have things that get brought up where we're like, I didn't like the way that I did that right there. I wish that I could have done something different. At least that's where we eventually get. Our knee-jerk reaction might be, how dare that person over there make me feel this way or make me act this way? The evolution of that idea is, thank you for that person for showing me this part of myself that I still need to work on. So when we're going through a dark night of the soul experience, similarly, we might be facing a lot of the things that we have created within ourselves, how we treat people, how we treat our own bodies, how we move through our day-to-day lives in a way that maybe doesn't serve us, doesn't serve the life path that we want to be building. There are so many different things that might be reflected back to us through this process. So that brings me to, how do we move through the dark night of the soul process quicker, if possible? I do want to say that, again, in the idea of like a soul contract, there might be a certain amount of time that you are supposed to go through a dark night. And it might feel, again, like the metaphor I used in my last video, like you are swimming in the ocean and you get pulled into the undercurrent and you're just spinning around and around. And occasionally you come up to the surface and you see the light and it's beautiful. And then the wave comes and it brings you back in, and you might find yourself there for weeks, months, years. It can last a very, very long time. But there are tools that we could be using in that moment that will help us to be more comfortable while it's happening and potentially get to the shore a little quicker. It's so important for you to find practices that sustain you. Meditation, I think, is so key. I talk about meditation all the time. Find a meditation practice that works for you. That might be a basic breathing practice. Maybe you like yoga. Maybe you need to dance. Find time in your day-to-day to bring that energy in. And I know that's easier said than done, because when you're going through it, you're like, I can't get out of bed. I have no energy. I can't even make decisions for myself. And when that happens, I put in my headphones and I put on a guided meditation. I put on some really nice calm music. That way I don't really have to think about it. But the guided meditations are really nice because then you can work on the programming from a subconscious level or consciously as you are actively listening, but that doesn't have to be the case. Allow the words of other guides to support your mental state and choosing more positive thoughts, more positive energies, and help to bring more of a soothing energy into your energy field. Again, when we're going through the dark night of the soul, it's showing us things that aren't working in our life. So start identifying what that is. See a therapist, see somebody like me who will help you to identify what are the blocks, what are the things that you don't actually like about your life, and why don't you like them, and why does that exist in the first place? Why was it created? And once we identify that, we can figure out what are the next steps to get you to the life that you actually want to be living. The quicker that you can identify that, the quicker that you can start taking active steps to work towards that other life. That's when you're likely going to see the more in and out state of going into the darkness and going into the light, where you might just get a little bit of the light sometimes, then you go back into the dark, but eventually you start going more into the light, and then you're in the dark just a little bit less, and then eventually you come into the light light and you really start just living in that lighter, more expansive state. During the dark night of the soul, you have to go into the pain. You have to go into the darkness. You have to really feel what's there. Our body stores memories and it stores emotions. And it's very difficult to identify where exactly that's coming from because it isn't in a language that we often are used to exploring. It's not maybe something that we will even hear. It is somewhere in our body, and then we go into it and we see the images, we see the memories, we see what we stored there, the judgments. We see all these layers that exist there, and we have to keep going through it more and more and more. It's like digging through the soils, which if you've ever had a session with me, you often end up digging into the soil at some point in time, whether actual soil or metaphorical soil. But there's always deeper layers within that soil of new treasures, or, there's going to be new aspects of self that you find, or old aspects of self that you left behind that need to be integrated back into yourself so that you can move forward more whole. During the dark night of the soul, because you are going through those darknesses, it's really important that you protect your space, allow yourself to surround yourself by positive people, to listen to music that really inspires you. When I do go through my darkness, I allow myself to go into my dark music. So, there are time periods where I just have the Birthday Massacre on repeat, and that is actually my happy place in the dark. It feels really, really good, and so I can bask in the darkness. There is benefit to that as well, to allow yourself to just fully take it on. I've also gone through periods of time where the dark is so intense that I remind myself that I am the scariest thing in the dark. So Halloween season is actually my favorite because I will actually get myself in that mindset when I go into haunted houses, and I will put on my black lipstick, and I'm like, I'm literally the scariest thing here. Nothing can with me. And I go through a haunted house like that, and I'm just stone cold. I just give thumbs up to everything that pops up at me. I can't be scared. I take that attitude and I bring it into my mind. I take it into my dark places. When I go within into myself, I am the scariest thing. I am strong. I can handle it. Whatever it is, it can come my way, and I will love it. I will accept it. I will see it for what it is, and then I will figure out what medicine it needs in order to transform it. So think about that too. The light is important, but sometimes you really do have to delve into your darkness and find your gothic side, and that is totally okay. I think in this spiritual path, there are so many spiritual leaders out there that are just I am the guru, I am light, I am love, I have met this state where I am pure, and they're on a different level of existence, which may or may not be a little bit bullshit. I really like the leaders that we see that are popping up that are a mixture of the dark and the light, where they're not afraid of the dark, and then you can see that in their personalities. They haven't changed themselves, and I think that's really important too. Sometimes when we're going through the dark night of the soul and we're seeing all these things, and we're I really like that aspect of myself. I really like my black lipstick. I don't want to give that up. Well, you don't have to. Just because you're becoming more spiritual doesn't mean that you still can't embrace your darkness and have fun with it. So that is just a little example, but I want you to think about that for your own life. What are the things that maybe you partake in that people are oh, that's dark, but actually it's just a societal conditioning, a societal programming, a societal norm that you just don't fit into, and you're never supposed to fit into, and it's actually up to you to embody further the value or the idea that you're seeing that you like, and go out into the world and rock it to your fullest. That might be your breakthrough moment to actually live that even fuller. That said, it's a slippery slope. So I have a video that I put out on conspiracy theories, and there are some conspiracy theories that maybe can benefit you. Go watch that video if that's something that you're into, so that you can kind of see how do you work with those beliefs in a way that really empower you and those around you, which kind of beliefs will lead you astray. But when you're thinking about that, it's important maybe not to get too caught up in dark conspiracy theories, because it might pull you down a path into illusion, into being separate, into othering those around you, into being afraid of the planet, being afraid of what exists here. That's not the energy that you're looking for. You're looking to empower yourself, to feel good in your body, to feel good about living, about feeling stoked to bring your gifts into the world and make the planet a better place to live. So if your thought processes are taking you down a different road, that is a sign to maybe pump the brakes brakes and look at other avenues for you to explore how you can bring your best vision into fruition. So I also just want to preface that the dark night of the soul is very much interlinked with our mental states. I am not a doctor. I am not a psychologist. I am not here to diagnose, and I'm not here to say that there is not benefit in working with a therapist of some sort who may or may not diagnose you. And from a soul first perspective, when I look at somebody's energy field and somebody's like, I have bipolar, well, I see it as a fragmentation from the soul level. There have been a couple of times that I have been diagnosed with bipolar when I was younger, and it was actually that I was just really out of alignment with the life that I was supposed to be living in so many different ways. So I think that sometimes these labels we get are there to compartmentalize us because it makes us more easily digestible. It makes whatever we're dealing with, oh, this person has this chemical imbalance, it's easily explained and here is a pill. There's actually deeper layers to that when we do look at it from the soul perspective, we can help to bring the fragments back together and to help somebody to find wholeness outside of the label. If the labels work for you, and depending on what type of mental conditions that you're dealing with, like definitely continue to work with your healthcare providers and consider thinking about these alternatives as well that you can bring into your practice, into your health regimen to begin working towards a healthier life. Because I think that there is benefit in seeing both and working with both depending on where you are in your journey. And I want you to be safe. I want you to take care of yourself. Another disclaimer, if you are feeling suicidal, you are not alone. There are lots of resources available for you. And as Joey and I were talking about last week again on Library of the Untold, if you're ever really, really struggling, feel free to reach out to us. We've been through those really, really dark moments, and sometimes it doesn't feel like maybe we can get through the night. So those are your moments to know you should reach out to somebody and seek some help where you can find it. Look at your tools, see if you can find strength within to hold your own hand through the night if possible. But this planet is not an easy one to be on. So if you are struggling and you find yourself in those dark places, you are not alone. And again, this planet is up sometimes, and we have a very heavy burden to bear to transform the energy that exists here and to help to lift the energies into the planet to create a new world. But again, it starts within, and that means that we have to deal with all of the darkness and all of the pain within ourselves first, and that is so difficult. So look for your resources, find somebody to work with. I can't recommend finding a mentor enough. If you want to work with me, I would be honored to support you. I can go into the darkness. I can deal with all the things that come up, but there are also other types of healthcare professionals, other types of spiritual guides that you can reach out to. There are so many people out there that you can definitely do some searching and find the type of person that will work for you and your uniqueness. So whatever you're going through, if you are going through a dark night of the soul, remember to look for what inspires you, to look for the practices that will sustain you, to be adding in new habits that help you to work towards the person that you want to be, because those are the types of actions that will get you into the life that is meant for you and on the other side of what you're currently going through. Next week, I'm going to be talking about the awakening process, which again, I feel like is so interconnected with the dark night of the soul, but I recognize that I wanted to just talk about the dark night of the soul because I skimmed over it a lot in my last video. And when I'm talking about my journey and I'm just hitting the events that took place, I don't really get to go into these like deeper themes that maybe are more applicable. I think it's easy to separate the dark night from the awakening, but they are kind of like two sides of the same coin. So next week we will go further into that awakening process. I am also going to be on vacation this week. So next week I might be posting a video on meditation and how to make it easier. So if you don't see the awakening video next week, it'll be the week after. I hope you've really liked what you've seen today. Please let me know where you are in your awakening journey, in your dark night of the soul, what's coming up for you. I really want to hear and to explore these ideas. Please like and subscribe, share with a friend, and I look forward to seeing you next time.